Welcome to The Loud Lens, the unfiltered podcast for creators who are done with the BS. I'm Khandie, the host, and today we're tackling something that's been quietly shoved down our throats in the creative industry, the idea you need a degree to be legit. Now, let me say it now. I have to say it. Come in close if you need to hear it clearly, whatever. I am not anti-education. If you have a degree, amazing, big achievement. I'm not poo-pooing that. But we need to talk about the fact that that's not the only way in, and more importantly, it's definitely not a guarantee. Now, I'm going to trigger one in the next section. Because it talks about my childhood and yeah, it's not great. Okay. So let's talk about my childhood and why I decided to chase and change my viewpoint. Because my childhood is extremely complicated. I wasn't raised by any biological family. I was brought up by a parental type figure for a short time, and it was violent and it was abusive. And I'm not going to go into details here because this is not trauma dumping, but it shaped how I operated in the world and definitely how I saw the world as well for a very long time. At school, being good and achieving was survival. If I didn't excel, I wasn't just letting myself down. I was literally going to get punished when I got home, physically, emotionally. Yeah, okay. So I would go to school as a form of escape from what was going on at home. And then I would go in there, and don't get me wrong, I got bullied at school. I think it was quite obvious because I didn't have the personality you have now, right? I y I was really traumatized. I was struggling. I did not make connections very well with friends. A lot of this is on me. Because I didn't want anyone to know my secret. I let since later that a lot of people knew, but kids don't know how to deal with that. And some of the teachers who did know didn't want the. It would need to say some of the teachers who did know didn't see the point in reporting it because I'd be out of the school soon. Awful, I know. And then there was one or two teachers who saw it and tried to change stuff. I always want to give a shout out to one teacher who I really liked at Mr. T. So he was great. Okay. So I studied hard, like my life depended on it because it kind of did. I ended up sitting 14 GCSEs. I think if I remember rightly, and I dug it out yesterday. So I got mostly A's and A stars. There was a B, there was a C, but and then there was like all the sciences, three languages, including Latin. Um, I worked hard, and then I went to do some A levels. I did forget this media. I know everyone says the most pointless degree. I never knew where that mindset came out, but anyway, I did really well. I racked up qualifications like a bodybuilder collecting medals. Honestly, there was loads. But I was not naturally gifted in any way. I was terrified, and creative subjects were not an option initially because I was told that art, performance were not real for careers. Now, I was able, when I left the situation, to do my A levels and study media, which was a thing. I remember we sat and watched Law and Order for ages, and I still love it to this day. Uh, but I didn't have it naturally. There was no, "Oh my god, you're so naturally this." So it didn't happen. It was pure slogging at the books, honestly. I did not I focused so heavily on schooling because one, it meant that my home life was not gonna be as brutal as it could have been. It was brutal in many other ways, but I wasn't contributing essentially by being a failure to it. That being said, I decided to leave education altogether, even though I was offered a scholarship and run to the military, which I have spoken about. Okay, I joined up when I was very young. I was able to do education there, but I needed to get out of a situation. I couldn't. I needed someone else to take control of my life because I was a very broken, very sad, very un just didn't know where my life was going to go child. I wasn't in any trouble with the law or anything like that. So I joined the military. I needed someone else to take over all my decisions. I know it sounds really silly, but if you come from somewhere where you haven't been, I was too scared to think on my own. Let's just say that. When I joined the military, I learnt to think on my own. I learnt to build myself up again. I was able to, but that could go into a whole different one. So I left education with this folder full of qualifications, right? And do you know what happened? No one else has seen him bar me confirming what I had. And in the years that I've been left the military, went off to be a show girl around the world, come back, still being a photographer. There's not been one brand I've worked with, not one client I've shot, and not one booking, business collaboration opportunity. None of them have ever said, "Can we see your grades first?" The degrees, the diplomas, they've all sat somewhere gathering dust. In fact, I know where they are. They're in the bottom drawer here. Meanwhile, what has helped me build a successful career? Being reliable, being creative, learning by actually doing it. And that includes failure and getting back up and redoing it. And I'll be honest, Googling the hell out of things I didn't know the answer because someone must have asked it somewhere. I mean, I remember sitting at 2 a.m. Googling about the latest changes to GDPR because I was so worried I got it wrong. Turned out I hadn't, but I was panicking because I just needed to be above it. There has been jobs where I have had the utter ludicrousy of being asked, "Do I have a degree?" Not whether I can prove it. I was asked by a company, could I come in and photograph on a 6-month contract some cars they had? It's a very prestigious car company. And I was like, I don't really shoot cars. And they said, no, it's really easy. We just need someone who can operate a camera. I was like, okay. So I went in to meet them because at the time it was very early on in my career. And when I walked in, they had this huge turntable with the cars on. It was in a massive room and there were lights all around, soft lighting. So there was this amazing look on the car from above. They had it and then you could turn it on and the lights underneath would come up and light the car underneath. It was just stunning. They had the camera set up in one angle, and what would happen is I'd press a button and the turntable would go through a series of angles it was pre-programmed to do, and I would photograph the car. And it would say, shot one needs to have the focus fall on this, shot two needs to focus on this. I think there was 17 angles on the different angles on the car. No, I'm lying. I've got 17 is always a number I pull out, isn't it? No, it was 10 angles on the car, 7 focal points. That's where I'm going. And then interior shots had to be done with a different camera on the other side. It was, it was all done. And I was like, okay. And I said, so do I do anything creative with this? And they're like, no, just you just got to press that button. I was like, okay, cool. Now I considered that job until they said I need a degree. And I said, well, at the time I didn't have one. And they said, oh, we can't. I said, well, we can't take someone on because we need a degree. I said, to push a button. And I was a bit annoyed at this because they brought me all down. They never mentioned it at all to me. And they're like, yeah, we need someone with a degree. And I looked at the wages and I went, like getting a degree is thousands of pounds worth of work. Like, yeah, I said, but you're paying 20 pence over minimum wage. In fact, I know I probably should have said it. I just said McDonald's pays better and they don't need a degree. And the guy just looked at me and his staff sniggered. I think everyone knew that. The idea is somehow if you have a degree, you know what you're doing. All I was going to do was push a button. Imagine going to university for years and getting to thousands of pounds of debt for someone to get you to push a button. I couldn't get, and then they don't even pay you to help pay back some of that debt that it's unlivable. I'm sorry. Now let's talk about the stats they're not looking at because it gets juicy. According to the UK Graduate Outcomes Survey, over 70% of photography graduates are not working in photography 15 months after graduation. That's a lot. Let that sink in. We've got people going into debt, spending more than 3 years, sometimes more, so say, in classrooms, only to not be in the field they're working for. That's mad. That's utterly mad. I can't understand how that's happening. Meanwhile, according to the Creative Industry Policy and Evidence Centre, over 60% of creative freelancers learn their craft outside of formal education. And when clients were surveyed by format, they said the top reasons for hiring a photographer were their style, their portfolio, and their personality fit. No mention of education there. Now, this isn't me dragging education. This is me saying, let's stop pretending it's the only door into industry. Now, I will also say, if you go on Facebook, every knobber with a camera thinks they're a photographer. Okay, I literally came across somebody who'd set up a business, called it some really SEO generic name like cheap wedding photographer or something like that. Their adverts were full of mistakes. They were charging a charge they're not allowed to. In fact, I saw this again with one of my friends actually. He started charging VAT when he's not registered, but sorted that out. But this guy was charging VAT. He just started. There's no way he's VAT registered. I put my money on he's not VAT registered. And his packages made no sense. So it was £200 for 2 hours, but four hours was 500. Well, I just buy 2 lots of 2 hours, mate, because it's £100 cheaper. It didn't make any sense. Like yeah. I I don't I don't think I've ever sat in a lecture hall worrying about branding. There isn't been. But I am a successful photography brand. I'm going to say that now. I've done teaching, seminars, podcasts. That's what you listen to now. I've written books. I've booked work in. All because I chose to start. I became a creative without permission, essentially. I learned by experimenting, failing, watching, researching, and getting straight back in front of people and showing up again. If you're waiting for someone to give you the green light to be creative, this is it. Okay? Go. The green light's on. Go. Burn the rule book. Go. But what I will say, if you are going to do education, one of the things I think every photographer running a business needs to do is get a business qualification, or at least go sit in on some basic, and that doesn't mean like you have to go sit in a classroom. Go on YouTube and learn what it means to run a business. Go learn about marketing. Go learn these little skills, because taking pretty pictures isn't going to give you a business, darling. It isn't. Doing some pretty content videos isn't going to give you a business, darling. You need to know about contracts. You need to know about time management. You need to know how to bill properly. You need to know what the invoice laws are, what the contract laws are in the UK. You need to know about insurance. You need to know about client management. You need to know about how you can store their data. There's so much a part of the business, because taking the pictures is not it. And I know many people out there are doing it. And you can only see these people who aren't running a business effectively. Oh, my photographer got sick. It's 3 weeks ago. There's no one to replace them. What do I do? A professional photographer will have someone to replace them, or at least have a system in which they can get someone to stand in for them. Because I think that's what is a bare minimum. Oh, my photographer has ghosted me. That's happening more and more. Oh, this has happened. This happened. My wedding photos are 9 weeks out. What moment it was? I didn't get a contract. These are all red flags to me. Education can be amazing. But some people, universities where they find their voice, their people, their craft, but it does not mean access is equal. Not everyone can afford to take 3 weeks off work. Not everyone has parents who financially support a degree and can. Not everyone thrives in an academic environment. Some of us are trying to survive without, never mind trying to fill in, I'll be honest, UCAS applications. No one's filling those in. Oh, God. When I looked at one for my student the other day, I was like, oh, poor kid. It's intense. We need to normalise the multiple routes into success, and formal education shouldn't be gatekeeping. Here's what mattered in my career, and I'm going to tell you now. Consistency. Showing up even when I was winging it. I was online. I was talking. I was showing my face. Adaptability. I learnt from mistakes. I didn't wallow in them. I was like, okay, I've done that wrong. What do I do next? I was shifting every time I needed to. If this business model wasn't working, I had to shift it across and do something else. I built connection with my clients and collaborators and brands. I talked to them. I was in there. And vision. I created work that made people feel something. I never stopped creating for my personal portfolio. You often see these pictures on my Instagram or on my TikTok. I always share something like a personal project we're working on that's not always client-based. But none of that was taught to me in school. It came from experience and definitely came from my life. Having to dodge. Sorry, I'm not going to make light of it because I've got a dark humor. I stayed curious. I kept wanting to learn. I did self-trust. I had to trust myself. That was probably the biggest one for me, because I was made to feel like nothing for so long. I think it was my time in military that built me to self-trust. I have the power of conviction. I know what I know. So just trust that. You can be qualified on paper and still be shit at what you do. Honestly, there are many out there. You can be self-taught and be incredible. Both things can be true. And if you're sat here thinking, but I didn't go to university, I don't have a qualification, who's going to take me seriously? Let me say this as clearly as I can. You are allowed to build a dream without a degree, but also with one. Google is free. YouTube is there. Mentors exist. Courses, workshop communities, they're all accessible in new ways now. But if you want a degree, go get one. And if you can't, or you don't want one, it doesn't make you any less. If you have come from a background like mine, I hope this hasn't triggered you, but I also hope you realise how wonderful you are to get through it. I have always had this saying given to me that it is okay to be sad, to be angry, to hate because what happened to you. You can be a warrior, a survivor, or a victim. There is no shame in any one of them. One day you might wake up and feel absolutely traumatized by it, and that's okay. You're a victim of it that day. But that doesn't mean any point is guilt proportioned to you at all. Please understand that guilt is not yours to hold in any way. It took me a long time to learn that. A long time. The reason why I'm so feisty now, partly because of military, is because I need to tell that young girl I was before, everything we went through, we came out better. We came out so good. So good. To that little ginger-haired girl that sat cowering on the bottom of the stairs, scared to go up. We're okay, kid. We did okay. We did okay, kid. Gonna get me in it. I need to edit that out of the podcast. We did okay, kids. So if this is resonating, oh, hang on, wait a minute. I have to edit that out. If this resonated with you, share it. Send it to the friend who was too scared to start because they didn't feel like they were qualified enough. I want to see your journey. I want to talk about your journey. And if you made it without the traditional path, share that story. And if you did share that story, you should be proud. You worked so hard. I hope that you enjoy whatever career you choose for yourself or create for yourself or do. Because if we can't just not be breaking rules, we need to be rewriting them. Anyway, this has been the Loud Lens with me. You don't need permission to take up space or start a business, but I will suggest you learn how to run a business. Take care of you. I'll see you all in the next one.